This is the number non-calculator worksheet set A. So actually let's have a look at the questions and start working our way through it. Okay, so this is the whole worksheet. This is what you should be looking at before we get started. Alright, let's start with the first question. Part A, if we just have a look at this, this is what's the cube root of 64? What three same numbers times together to give you 64, and that's going to be 4. Okay, let's look at question 2. We need to add these two fractions. Straight away you can see that the denominators are different. So we're going to times the first fraction by the bottom number in the second fraction. We're going to times the top and bottom by 4. And the second fraction, we're going to times the top and bottom by 5. So if I do that to the first fraction, times 2 by 4 and 5 by 4, I'm going to get 8 over 20. If I times the second fraction, top by 5 and bottom by 5, I'm going to get 5 over 20. And so that's what I turn it into. Once both the denominators are the same, I could simply add the fractions. 8 20ths plus 5 20ths, that's 13 20ths, and that's my answer. Make sure you're familiar with this. This is a popular type question, very likely to come up. Question 3 is multiplying fractions. Basically times the two top numbers times the two bottom numbers. That's the easiest form of question with fractions. So 2 times 3 is 6, 5 times 7 is 35. Pretty straightforward. With regard to dividing fractions, I'm going to change the division to times, and I'm going to flip the second fraction. So leave the first one the same. That remains as 5 over 9. The divide turns to a times, and the second fraction flips over to 4 over 3. You need to remember this method, because once you've done this, you could times these fractions just as we did in question 3. So 5 times 4 is 20, 9 times 3 is 27, so that's 20 over 27. Question 5 should be pretty straightforward. Anything to the power of 0, anything, even a letter to the power of 0 is 1. Okay, so that is going to be 1. Because it's all in brackets, that means 5x is all to the power of 0, and it's 1. Okay, going on to question 6. Question 6, the key word in question 6 is estimate. Right, that means each of those numbers in the question I need to round to one significant figure. So the 28 is going to become 30. The 5.32 is going to become 5, and the 0.514 is going to become 0.5. So I need to rewrite them like that. 30 times 5 over 0.5. 30 times 5, 3 5s 15, add a 0 onto it is 150, divided by 0.5. And you should know dividing by 0.5 is the same as timesing by 2. So 150 times 2 is going to give me 300, and that is my final answer. Right, make sure you're really familiar with that and you're happy with that. Question 7. Anything to the power of a half. Power of a half means square rooted. So that this area is really the square root of 100. Please do write this down when you're doing it. The square root of 100, you should know, is 10. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Anything to a negative power means either flip it if it's a fraction, or if it's a whole number like it is here, 9, put it over 1. So that's going to be 1 over 9 squared. And 9 squared is 81, so it's 1 over 81. That's my final answer. Okay, make sure you're familiar with that. A lot of you have done it and are pretty happy with that. Question 9, 22.5% of 240. This is a basic percentage problem, and it's aimed to help you break it down. Always like break it down into 10s or 20s or 5s or 2.5s. So 10% of 240, you should know, is 24. 5% therefore is 12. 2.5% is half of 12, which is 6. Make sure you look at those, you understand them. And now we want to use combinations of these to make up 22.5%. So I'll need 2 10s and a 2.5. So 2 lots of 24 and a 6. And if I add those together, I'm going to get 54. Okay, pretty straightforward there. Express as the product of prime factors 225. Well, I'm going to do a factor tree here. 225, if I split it up, there are loads of ways you could split it up, but I'm going to split it up as 25 and 9. 9 lots of 25 make 225. Right? I'm going to split the 25 up into 5 and 5, and those two are prime, and I'm going to split the 9 up into 3 and 3, and those two are prime as well. So I'm going to stop there, and so 25 as the products of primes, I'll write them in order, or numerical order, 3 times 3 times 5 times 5. Okay, and that's my answer. Make sure you put a time sign in between there, nothing else, no commas, nothing like that. Writing a number in standard form. Well, first of all, I need to write this as a number between 1 and 10. I need to put a decimal point in it somewhere, and that's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it between the 3 and the 0. As you look at it now, you could see that that's a number between 1, and 10. I don't need all these zeros at the end here, so I'm just going to write 3.052. So that's the first bit, 3.052. Right now the decimal point is all the end here. I need to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places, so it comes over here. So it's going to be times 10 to the power of 6 because it's a big number. If that was a decimal number and I was moving in the opposite direction, that would be a minus 6, right? But this is a large number. It's what, 3,052,000. It's a large number, so that's what it looks like in standard form. Make sure you fully understand this and are able to do it. Question 12. Now, okay, this is a small number that I'm writing in standard form. So similar thing to the last time, I need to put the decimal point here. Okay, so that makes the number 1.323. Again, I don't need all these zeros at the front here. I just need to put the decimal point there, and I'll get 1.323. The decimal point is going to move from here. You can see it this time. 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right, but because it's a tiny number, it's going to be times 10 to the 3. Okay, make sure you understand that completely and are able to write numbers in standard form, both big numbers and small numbers. Understand when you need to put a minus for the power and a plus for the power. Number 13, we're quite familiar with these. Pat and Julie share some money in the ratio 3 to 5. Now, when you're doing these problems, right, it is really important that you label it up, right? So I'd be inclined to write P for Pat there and J for Julie over there. Okay, so the P, because they're in order, the 3 stands for Pat, the J, the 5 stands for how many parts Julie gets. Julie gets 30 more than Pat. So we're going to actually look at the number of parts more Julie gets. So I'm going to do 5 take away 3, which is 2. So that means Julie gets 2 parts more than Pat. Julie gets £30 more than Pat. So 2 parts is actually worth £30. In all of these questions, I need to work out what one part is. And in this case, 30 divided by 2 is 15. So one part is 15. Look at the question. How much money did Pat get? Now, Pat got 3 parts. So that means she's going to get 3 lots of 15. Pat got 3 parts. So that's 3 lots of 15, which is 45. And that's your answer. That's your result for this part. Okay, I'll go back to that. Ben and Tim share £80 in the ratio 3 to 7 even. Okay, if I put the pen back, this here 3 is Ben and Tim is the 7 parts. Now, Ben and Tim share £80, so they're going to share the whole £80 in the ratio 3 to 7. So what I'm going to do is add up the 3 and the 7, that's 10 parts. And they're going to share 10 parts, right, £80 into 10 parts. Ben is going to get 3 of those parts. Tim is going to get 7 of those parts. And the question wants us to work out how many parts does Tim get. So if I do 80 divided by 10, each part is worth 8. Tim is going to get 7 of those. So 7 lots of 8 is 56. That's how much Tim gets. All right. This question here, this next one, is really essential that you understand and you have a good idea about how to do it. Okay. So looking at this question here, I'm going to do 2, I'm going to times the number 2 times 6. I'm going to do that first, and then I'm going to times it by 10 to the 7 times 10 to the 4. So times it by 10 to the 7 times 10 to the 4. So I'm going to just break up the problem as it is already there. I'm going to do 2 times 6, which is 12, 10 to the 7 times 10 to the 4, so times 10 to the 7 times 10 to the 4, which is 10 to the 11. Now that's not written in standard form. Remember when we did question 11 and 12, we said the first part needs to be a number between 1 and 10. Right now that 12 is bigger than 10. So what I need to do is to turn that into standard form. That 12 is 1.2, if I put the decimal point there, 1.2 times 10 to the 1. Now if you think about that, 1.2 times 10 is just 12. So that's another way of just writing it. But don't forget this bit here, which is still hanging around, times 10 to the 11. Now I could tidy it up. I could bring these two, 10 to the 1 and 10 to the 11 together, and that's going to make 1.2 times 10 to the 12, and that's my answer. You might need to study this question a bit so you understand it fully, but make sure you do, right? It doesn't matter whether powers are negative or positive. When you times it, you add the powers. Just be careful with that. Question 16. This question here is a division. When you're dividing numbers in standard form, the best thing to do is to actually write it as a division. This one, 8 times 10 to the 12, divided by 4 times 10 to the 3. So I'm going to write it like that. I'm going to do this division first. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And if I divide this section here, 10 to the 12 divided by 10 to the 3, 12 take away 3 is 9, so it's going to be 10 to the 9. That one is pretty straightforward. Question 17. What is 32 out of 80 as a percentage? Well, I need to write it as 32 over 80 first, write it as a fraction. I need to turn the bottom number into 10, right? That's going to help me work my way up to a percentage, which is something out of 100. So if I divide that by 8, I'm going to get 10. If I divide 32 by 8, I'm going to get 4. So that I can rewrite as 4 over 10. Have a look at that and make sure you definitely do understand it. At this stage, it should be pretty straightforward, because if I times the bottom by 10 and the top by 10, it becomes 40 over 100. Percentage is something out of 100. 40 over 100 is 40%. That's my answer. Make sure you study it, make sure you understand it, and you can do it. Question 18. 27 to the power of 2/3. Now this is a high level question, but you simply need to split up that fraction 2/3 into 1/3, which stays inside the brackets, the bottom thing, so 1 over 3, and the 2 goes outside. Okay? Anything to the power of a third means cube root it. So I'm going to cube root 27. What three same numbers times together to give you 27? Well, we should know that it's 3. 3 times 3 is 9, times another 3 is 27. So the cube root of 27 is 3. But don't forget, we still need to square it. 3 squared is 9, and that's my answer. Please spend some time studying this question, making sure you understand it completely. Alright, rationalizing means to get rid of the square root in the denominator. So in this case here, I need to times the top and bottom by root 5. Yeah, whatever is at the bottom, that's what you times top and bottom by. 35 times root 5 is 35 root 5, and 5 times root 5 is simply 5. I know you all know that, you're pretty comfortable with that. So, simplifying that, what's 35 divided by 5? That's 7, so my answer is 7 root 5. And again, you need to be pretty comfortable with that. Finally, question 20. We need to do this as if we were multiplying out a pair of brackets with x's. 2 times 4 is 8. Do the other ends, root 3 times root 3, that's going to be 3. But because one's a minus and one's a plus, it's going to be minus root 3. Then do the ones in the middle. Plus root 3 times 4 is plus 4 root 3. 2 times minus root 3 is minus 2 root 3. And that is most of the hard work done. You need to combine the 2 in the middle. Yeah? So I have positive 4 root 3 take away 2 root 3, and 8 take away 3. 8 take away 3 is 5, and positive 4 root 3 take away 2 root 3 is positive 2 root 3. Okay. You might need to rewind this and go through this again. If you need to pause it at any stage, do so and go back. Make sure you understand how to do these, and now try set B before you check the answers for set B.